This is Critical Nonsense, our high-lowbrow show about culture, science, and tech. This week, episode 300, where Aaron, Joey, and I spin the wheel of nonsense to look back at past episodes.
Woo!
With karate, I'll kick your... This is what a Joey sounds like.
You're stupid! This is what an Aaron sounds like.
And this is what an executive producer and tenacious P for producer Jess Vander sounds like.
Hi, this is Jess.
I have to explain my random outburst. I tried to watch Step Brothers the other night, and I realized that it is not my humor. It is the antithesis of what I find funny. I spent an hour into it. I hadn't even giggled, and I was like,
man.
I need to leave it, but the people who I know who love it, a la Joey, it literally pieced together this like major personality puzzle where I was like, oh yeah. And I'm not saying I don't find you funny, Joe. I find you hilarious. I love you. I love you more than you are my stepbrother.
John Stamos.
Yeah, like it is a time capsule of an era, and I couldn't think of an actual quote from it, so I just gave the tone of what I heard for the whole movie.
You know what's funny? I think the first time that we met in person, I was like, because we sat in the conference room and talked for 2.5 hours. I think in an email, I think either in an email or in that moment, just like blurted John Stamos.
Yes.
And you probably were like, no.
I did what I do to everybody. I giggled to give acknowledgement of it made you happy. That's why you said it. Like, communication isn't always about like exchanging ideas. Sometimes it's just about like, I'm happy for you. Like,
I shot hoops with Johnny Hopkins and Sloan Kettering.
I did get to that point in the movie. I got that line, and I think I was making crab cakes, and I looked at the TV and thought, this is a time where I should chuckle. Okay. So, anyway, what are we here to talk about today, friends?
The fucking Catalina wine mixer. We're not.
I have opened Pandora's box.
Oh,
I've opened Joey's box, and I apologize.
We only play
deeply.
80s Joel. All right, I'm done. I have to turn it off. It's like, we are talking about it's our 300th episode.
Yay!
And someone, Jess or Alex or someone had, or Aaron, I don't know. Alex had the idea.
Sound engineer and great ideas man, Alex Contel, had a great idea to honor our 300th episode by... I'm just taking over.
Yeah, please. I was going to say, Jess, take over.
Wherein we're going to do a fun, critical nonsense, nonsense wheel numbers time game. Yeah, nailed it. And what we're going to do is we're going to, using a random number generator, pop around to episode numbers past and reflect on either the state of, the future of, or random musings about that same topic until we get bored, and then we move to the next one. And that's the whole thing until we're done.
Yay!
It's our montage episode in a sitcom.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. Oh,
it sweeps. We can't produce a new show, so we're going to go back through old ones.
Yeah.
People deserve their vacation time.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I've got a number generator pulled up. I've got the archive pulled up.
Let's do it.
Let's give it a spin.
Give it a spin.
I'm going to need each time that I do this spin button, because this is a podcast, you're just going to need to make the sound of the spinny wheel. Okay, ready? And spin. All right, 121. Big 121. This is from April 20th, 2021, which is honestly like many 121s going on here. And the episode was the coming out gauntlet and thick conversations. What are the dangers when coming out becomes outdated? And what is the role of nuance in an increasingly media soundbite oriented culture? Whoa.
We were on one.
Woo, 2021. April was real. Did that have special guest star Dylan Fowler on it? Or was that...
It didn't. It was the three of us, and we talked about Colton Underwood, the business and real work of coming out, Gauntlet types, Tressie McMillan Cotton, Tell Me More, and Nuances Poetry. So, wow. Where to start? What has happened in the last 4 years?
Okay. I like this. I'm coincidentally gonna start with the thick conversations because I did love this concept that Joey brought to the convo. And I would say that we have gotten much worse at having thick conversations since 2021.
Not good.
Not good. We have and actually the idea of like helping people through the more gnarly and the more difficult and the more just like trudgy like things, I feel like that impetus was so helpful and right and good for us to be talking about. But I think human resistance to wanting to do that has completely swallowed our worlds. Totally. Everyone's keeping it thin these days.
We were talking at that point about like having to like over contextualize in conversations so that you wouldn't be misunderstood of like, I want to talk about this, but just so you know that I was born in New Hampshire and I'm one of 4 children and all these things. Anyways, cheeseburgers, but I feel like that has gotten way worse and the conversation has definitely gotten thinner.
Yes, we are thin as in, y'all. Ozempic is here to stay. It is. That is crazy.
Conversational Zep bound. We are in conversational Ozempic territory.
I mean, 100%. It's hard to remember time period in the past 5 years, but like I'm pretty sure since then there was that woman who just wrote that like tweet at some point being like, me and my husband have coffee in the garden every day and talk, and it's the best thing in my life, and we're so happy. And then everyone's like, we hate you. Why are you doing this? Look at your privilege for drinking coffee. And she was just like, I just said I love my husband.
There's no way out of it. I will say on the coming out Gauntlet too, I think the Gauntlet has maintained trajectory. I think that's good. It's still difficult, and I think it's very difficult coming out in public, which I believe was how we got into Colton Underwood and all that.
Is the maintained trajectory easier, less of a gauntlet, or more of a gauntlet?
I still think we're in less of a gauntlet than it was 10, 15 years ago. And I'd love for listeners to come in and check me on that. The place that I think the conversation might have missed some, not necessarily nuance, but I think that the conversations around coming out as trans have made it so much more difficult for younger people who are realizing their trans identity. I think that's actually become a bigger issue. And I think that the sort of schism that's been tried to be pushed down between the L and the G and the B and the T and all the other letters that come after that in the infinite acronym. I think that part is, as it relates to coming out, I think it is complicated. I think it is it's still easy to come. I think it is easy as a stretch, but if I'm going to be black and white about it, I think it is easier to come out to yourself than it is to come out to anybody else with all of the other letters of the acronym. I think that has gotten harder coming out to other people, but I think that coming out to yourself and the journey that people are on, that's consistent over the past 4 years, I think.
This reminds me of something that I had been reading a few months ago, and I don't know how broadly accepted this distinction is, but I have been thinking about it for a minute, which is pulling apart shame versus guilt. The idea that guilt is something where you behave out of alignment with your own values, but shame is when you behave out of alignment with other people's expectations or their values. And so it's interesting that you say this in the context of, maybe progress on the guilt train, but stagnation on the shame train.
Amazing.
Well, first of all, title of your memoir, Stagnation on the Shame Train.
Yes. That's good. That's very good.
Sorry, I haven't cited any sources. I genuinely don't remember when this came up, but probably it's some twisted contortion of TikTok that originally was Brene Brown or something.
Yeah. All right, spin the wheel.
Okay,
yeah, spin the wheel.
We did it. Great work.
Is this Wheel of Fortune or is this Price is Right wheel? Which one?
All right, and we got 75. Ooh, that takes us to actually a really interesting time. This is from mid-April 2020, episode 75, with the top 3 things not to do in quarantine. With Clarissa Pharr, Deputy Ideas Editor at Quartz. And this was a live clickbait episode, and the 3 picks were: number 1, don't text your ex. Number 2, don't call it social distancing. And number 3, don't forget to tip the pizza delivery person. Whoa.
I mean, those are evergreen. I mean, social distancing, maybe not, but tip the pizza guy and don't text your ex is like, that's evergreen. Maybe was especially important in that moment, but
I think the premise about that was you don't necessarily need to be less social to be physically further apart from each other, and the idea that you need to be socially distanced is actually dangerous, and the idea that instead maybe you just need to mask up and physically separate yourself is the preference.
I mean, it's interesting that we're sort of facing the opposite problem now, the 5 years later, of whether repercussions of that or many other things of like being together is harder. People physically distanced and didn't like physically reconvene in for a bajillion reasons of moving and whatever, and like that muscle has not really regrown per anything on the internet, like new studies and articles like every day.
Well, then likewise, like just the emotional like toll of figuring out how to socialize again. There was like a really acute moment where it was like, oh, right, I have to remember how to be around people again. And I have to remember how to behave like I did. But then like that was like the skein, like the first 20% of what we needed to do. And the rest, the other 80% of like intimacy and like being a part of societies and groups, like all of that was like, I hope it wasn't irreparably damaged by that time. But I think that the amount of work that it takes to recreate the closeness, the assumed closeness that we as a society, like as a human race had before, is going to take a long time to come back. Like, I genuinely think it's going to take a couple of generations to get to the point where people are just like emotionally around strangers again. Like, hey, you're taking me back to April 2020. I'm going to go right back to nihilism, back to that deep, dark place.
No, I mean, we were just talking about this in our past episode where we were saying, like, what about when I want to just retreat into my hole and be a gremlin and not actually talk to anybody? And what do we do when we still have that craving now to not be around others?
I do it for what it's worth, but that's because my introvert was able to come out of the closet during the
so
pandemic.
Coming out is easier.
Exactly.
Well, I mean, it is funny. Like, I remember, Aaron, when you first, like the first trip back to New York after, like when you were able to come back to the office, and you and I had talked, I'm sure you talked to many people all the time, but just being like, I don't know how I feel about, like, I'm excited to see everyone, and I'm feeling a lot of feelings about like being back with these people that I know and have been talking to the whole time, but not been present with. And I mean, I don't even know if you can get back to that place, because what is time? When was that trip? But yeah.
Well, no, but what's one quick thing that I find very interesting is that I think I went back to New York in the office probably like 4 or 5 times, like since the pandemic hit. Maybe a little bit more than that, but like 4 or 5 times. But they're spaced out enough that like I have very clear emotional snapshots of where I was on each trip. And the most recent trip that I took was the most successful, the most like harmony that I've felt as a human being, where it was like, I don't know, like life, work, the office, friends, like my own personal creative pursuits, all that stuff was like working together. And it was in such stark contrast to the abject like fear and terror that was going back into the office that first time for health reasons, for like social anxiety reasons, for all of the above. And like, I also have put a lot of work into those things. And so I don't know, I appreciate being able to look back being able to look at it and not go back to it. But it was real and it was harsh. And that's another reason why I think it's going to take us a long time to get out of there.
It's time.
Spin the wheel.
Time.
Spinning again. Spin
it. What other wheels are there? Is the Fortune? There's the right price.
Okay.
Price is right. Yeah, the Price is Right. Yeah.
170. This is from the start of May in 2022. Weirder inspiration. How can we better tap into inspiration from weirder, wilder places? Where are we tapping into inspiration from, y'all?
I just read something the other day, like a Murakami quote, and he was saying, like, if you want to think more obscurely, read more obscurely. If you read what everyone else is reading, you're going to think like everyone else is thinking. And it's just like a interesting synchrony with that. I think it is like, do we think that that's happening more then because of how fractured the media landscape is? Like there is a component of that is like creating maybe social cultural disconnections between individuals because our individual mediascapes are so different, but are people thinking more weirdly? Are we seeing more weird stuff?
Or is it all just back to crabs as everything reverts to crabs eventually?
Yeah.
But you know, the idea where
the carcination.
Right. In different parts of the world and over history, evolution just made crabs multiple times.
Yeah, like 7.
Right. And so the idea here of like, yeah, but if you're all using ChatGPT and you're all using your phones, similar ways and themes and platforms, like, how weird is it?
Is it a crab?
Is it weird?
Well, you know, something that I'm noticing is that, like, at least as far as inspiration goes for me, it's less so about where I was getting inspiration and more so about my openness to letting inspiration hit me. And, like, I've talked a lot on the pod about, like, media or news dieting since last November. And I didn't expect that to be such, like, for inspiration to be a byproduct of that, but it makes sense.
You're feeling like transformed by it, like a transformative effect now.
Completely. I think my blood pressure. I went to the doctor recently, and my blood pressure has actually dropped. Like my average blood pressure. I mean, I have to measure it all the time.
That's awesome. Amazing.
Yeah.
But I bring it up because, like, on one side, it's really practical. The time, like, I still have 24 hours a day. I'm still consuming content. It's just that I'm consuming content that, like, isn't it's not designed to activate my existential threat response all, like, constantly and at its most relentless. And the stuff that I'm choosing to spend my time interrogating or, like, enjoying, it's not even like super heady interrogation stuff. It was Step Brothers. Literally, it was like I wanted to watch a thing that I've heard about for a really long time, and I just did. And whether or not it inspired me, the thought that did come to mind was like, oh my God, this is like the prototype for another 10 to 15 years of humor. Like, I get that the inspiration came from, like, you know, being open to letting a puzzle piece drop into place. And I wouldn't have done that before.
Okay, I completely relate to this. It's funny that actually the we don't talk about on this episode was Chicago, and it's crazy because I saw Chicago for the first time last year and was like, whoa, this was a canon. I recognized that this was canon, and I just never have personally seen it before, but it is kind of amazing to, like, have another puzzle piece fit in, and you're like, whoa, everything in the in-between settles.
Wait, Chicago the play or Chicago 25 and 624? Like the like big band arena rock band of the 70s.
This is a great point because I actually do believe upon second look that this is about the arena rock band of the 70s. I'm so sorry, Les, that I have now ruined this. But anyway, whatever. Because those two things are related. Now I brought it up and also shown that I missed
Jess,
the
I think
reference.
Chicago said it best. It's hard to say I'm sorry.
Okay, you're right. Wait, but one other piece about this that is not just about, like, the, you know, filling in the gaps of the long time canon, but what about what?
I'm just, like, looking at their like top song list feels like it's talking like you're the inspiration. Like we've been hitting that. Like if you leave me now, like
there's no accident. Let's put it there for a reason, folks.
It's getting weirdly
It's not weird. It was definitely on purpose. Thank you, programming coordinator and musical legend Les Jacobs, everybody. Okay, but last quick thing on this, apropos of nothing, is what about just like going somewhere else? And like Aaron, to your point about coming to New York, or maybe it's just about like going to a new place. A few weeks ago, found myself on a college campus and hadn't been on one in a long time and was like, whoa, okay, this is different and I am learning. So I don't know, get out there.
Get out there.
Get out there.
Inspired.
And also, like, places do a lot. Content wise, I just wanted to throw out like Music League hadn't come into my life yet, and I love Music League because it gives you a chance to like discover new and old music based on like friendly competition with people that you know. So it is a little bit of an algorithm sidestepper to get you to new music, which is kind of cool. And then also Broadway. Like, you reminded me, Jess, with Chicago, when I was in New York, I went to see Maybe Happy Ending with Darren Criss in it, which is the first Korean musical to be translated for the Broadway stage. It was visually incredible. And Darren Criss was so good.
Wow.
But like having space for that, it's amazing. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Spin one more time.
Spin one more time.
Yeah, let's try to do one more.
Okay, sorry, I have to spin again because this went back before our episodes were numbered. So try again. Okay, folks. Nope, that is not going to work either. And we're spinning 15 times. Just cut this part. Guys.
Wow. This is all Joey every time. I just want to call that out.
Episode 158 from early February 2022. Buttresses, Tethers, and Grunts.
Wow.
When should you keep going when all you see ahead of you are troubles? And why do tennis players grunt?
Buttresses, Tethers, and Grunts. It sounds like a 1950s Disney song.
Buttresses, Tethers, and Grunts.
Oh
man, we talked
about elephants
about
and woozles
somehow
are very confusing.
Somehow, through the course of this conversation, I managed to squeeze in a conversation about the vanilla cookie. We also talked about nuance and complexity, imagining beyond your means, kinetic linking, mirroring, and tennis culture. Which is, speaking of imagining beyond your means, I did not look further. Just something that I saw recently brought up this idea of something about dressing your wage. I think was the idea. And I was like, whoa, I don't know about this. I think it was on some kind of personal finance content. I don't know why I'm saying that.
Is it like being
I'm thinking of what comes to mind.
Well, it reminds me, there's this old GQ article that I remember in the metrosexual era when that was a phrase. And I remember it so clearly because it said, if you want to be like a cool person they don't have day outfits and night outfits. They wear the same outfit from day to night. Mm-hmm. And like, on one hand, I kind of liked the inspiration of that because like, oh yeah, I want my life to be harmonious. Like I want my thing that I spend my job doing to be like connected to my joy and my pleasure and what I do at night. But also I'm like, I mean, it is GQ. And so it's just so ick and so gross and so assumptive about like what, like just the classism in that is outrageous. Like, it is deeply gross and noxious.
Don't be a class traitor. Like boo.
What? Yeah. Like the whole thing is just gross. But I do think that like this is another one where if I compare it to today, I worry about how our ability to imagine ourselves beyond where we're currently at is going to change. Mm-hmm. And I don't know. And in general, I think that I do believe that there's a crisis of imagination. I think that like over the past, let's say 25 years, there has just been an increased decline in our in our collective nurturing of the capacity to imagine things because we have more tools that can basically bring our imaginations to life. And also we're like kind of beaten down by what we think is possible. I think that there's been like a disillusion of hope and opportunity and possibility that sort of compounds that. Mm-hmm. So, again, I guess this wasn't 2020, so I can't say that was rooted in that nihilism. But I like bringing everything down, y'all.
No, it was rooted in the cookie. It was rooted in like the why, like what if you actually see a silver lining and a hope and yet like can be knocked down or have that light stamped out of you?
Well, there's like a compounding of judgment that has happened in that time frame, I think, right? Where you're saying like there are theoretically more imaginative tools, but more fear of judgment. I just saw one of the guy that does like the Subway interviews. I watched I just found out about him where he like has like a Metro card with like a lav mic behind it. And he just interviews people on the subway for like a hot take and they talk about it. And one guy was like, the guy was like a fashion designer, I think, or a model in France. And he was like, stop saying well-dressed people are gay. They're just well-dressed. You are unimaginative. And like he was just talking about these ideas. And I think he's like, look at Japan. Everybody looks so fly. And they're just like out there and experimenting, but there's like an acceptance that you can do that. And like what you wear today doesn't have to be like a statement of who you are. It's just like, I felt like wearing this today. Like, anyways, I'm wearing my moon boots and my like sweatpants and my fleece. So I think like that idea of like fear of reprisal because of internet and some of the other things we talked about already in this episode will lead to that.
Can we end on a happy note?
Yeah.
Like,
oh no, we're not doing that.
Can the happy note be all the wheels?
Yeah. No, I was trying to think of a third wheel this whole time, and I can't think of another game show that has a wheel. Press Your Luck doesn't have a wheel. The Floor doesn't have a wheel. Jeopardy doesn't have a wheel. I'm lost, guys. Merv Griffin, come in and save me. What's it? Because we've got Wheel of Fortune. We got The Price is Right. Is there?
Oh. Did Double Dare have a wheel?
Double Dare did not have a wheel.
It had like a pull down wheel that could like.
I mean, okay, I will run with that. In the obstacle course, there was a human hamster wheel that you'd run in and bring down a hand with a flag.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna give I like that.
Okay, according to ChatGPT, Wheel of Fortune and The Price is Right are the two core ones built around a wheel, but there's a whole chapter about lesser known and older and obscure shows built around a wheel, including The Wall, which is currently on NBC, a Plinko-style game show with a giant vertical wheel where contestants answer questions to control where the ball drops.
Chris Hardwick, yes.
There's Wheel 2000, which ran for just a year on CBS back in the late 90s, of a kid-friendly spin-off of Wheel of Fortune, or the Diamond Head game from 1975. Featuring a money wheel where contestants spun to determine cash winnings. That doesn't seem like much of a game, but it does seem like people love spinning wheels.
They're all spin wheels and hope you get money. That's our culture.
Yeah, sure. Why not?
Why not?
Well, thanks for playing this game. Our wheel of numbering on the past episodes, $300,000 million.
300 episodes? 300 episodes.
So much.
This thing has been going for 300 episodes?
It's really a lot of nonsense.
Regarding the number of episodes, it is many.
It's much.
It is
much.
I
just purred half lead, I think.
Yeah, I think you did.
Yeah.
What's the word?
Wipe yourself.
Regarding the count of episodes, it is 300.
It is. Well, thank you guys. It's a good one, and we'll do 301 more.
Love you.
Okay, bye.
Critical Nonsense is a Sylvain production.
brought to you by...
As always, we'd like to thank executive producer and gal about town, Jess Vander.
Thanks. We'd also like to thank sound engineer and 300-wheeled mastermind Alex Contel.
We'd like to thank programming coordinator and obscurity engine, Les Jacobs.
And thanks to our production crew and people with many good ideas, Sarah Gilbert, Nora Mestrich, Christy Jensen, Amanda Medina, and Amy Waters.
And as always, thanks, Len. Special thanks to Chicago.
Yeah.
Somehow they knew what this episode was going to be about in their top songs.
The band, the place, the musical. That's really...
They got some bangers.
They do.
I'm looking at this you're the inspiration. Let's go. All right.
Yeah, anyway, I really like that. But I have to go. This has been fun.
Gratitude.
See you next time.
Love you. Mean it. Bye.
Bye.
Buttresses, Tethers, and Grunts.